When time stopped for us. Chapter 1. The first moment of stillness. It began like any other ordinary day. The sun had risen, casting a warm golden hue across the town. Birds sang in the trees, and the hum of daily life filled the air. I was just beginning my morning routine, sipping coffee and preparing for another typical workday when it happened. The clock on the wall froze. The second hand, usually a blur of motion, halted in midair as if it had been arrested by some unseen force. I glanced around the room, confused, wondering if I had simply imagined it. But the world outside had also paused. The cars on the street were motionless. The leaves caught mid-fall, and even the light from the sun appeared suspended, frozen in its descent. Time had stopped. It was like stepping into a still life, painting where nothing moved, nothing changed. People stood in place as though caught in a moment of indecision, unable to move or speak. I thought for a moment that I was dreaming or maybe had lost my mind. But I wasn't the only one who noticed. My neighbor, an elderly woman named Mrs. Dunn, appeared at her window across the street. Her eyes, wide with alarm, met mine. I waved, but she didn't respond. Her motionless figure staring back at me, a reflection of the same eerie stillness I was experiencing. The world, for reasons I couldn't understand, had simply stopped. Chapter 2. The strangeness of silence. As the minutes passed, I began to realize that it wasn't just time that had stopped. The silence was overwhelming. There was no hum of the refrigerator, no distant chatter, no sound of cars passing or children playing in the park. It was as though the universe itself had become deafeningly quiet. I could hear my own breath and nothing else. I tried to move, to walk around, but it felt strange. My feet shuffled, but there was an unfamiliar heaviness to them, as though the air itself had thickened. I touched the wall and noticed that it felt different. The texture was the same, but there was an odd sensation in my fingertips, like I was trying to touch something just beyond my grasp, something I couldn't quite comprehend. I walked out of my apartment, down the empty hallway of my building, and out into the street. Everywhere I looked, people were frozen, their faces locked in expressions of surprise or contemplation, as if the moment of pause had caught them completely off guard. Not a single movement. It was like stepping into a photograph. The air smelled the same, but it felt empty, and I could feel something deep inside of me that I couldn't place, a strange sense of anticipation, as though something far greater than I could understand was on the horizon. Chapter 3. Searching for answers. As the hours stretched on, I grew more restless. The sense of confusion turned to frustration. Why had this happened? What was I supposed to do in a world where nothing moved, where nothing could change? I tried everything I could think of, looking for someone who could help, reaching out to my phone and computer to see if any messages were coming through, even searching the streets for any sign of life or movement. But there was nothing. I even called out to Mrs. Dunn across the street, but her mouth remained frozen in mid-sentence, her words unspoken. Trapped in time, the world was in stasis, and I had no idea how to fix it. Then I saw something. There was a shimmer just at the edge of my vision, a faint, ethereal light that seemed to pulse from the very fabric of time itself. It wasn't the sun, no. This light was different. It wasn't warm, it was cold, distant, and beckoning. Without thinking, I began walking toward it. As I approached the source of the light, I felt a strange sensation, as though I were walking into a dream or a memory that didn't belong to me. The further I went, the more I could sense the absence of time, as if the very concept of it was being undone with every step I took. Chapter 4. The meeting. The light led me to an abandoned park, where the trees were still, their branches like dark skeletal hands against the sky. The shimmer grew brighter and more intense until, finally, it coalesced into a figure. It was a woman, or something that resembled a woman. Her form was translucent, almost intangible, yet her presence was undeniable. Her eyes were like mirrors, reflecting 1,000 different realities at once. She looked at me as though she knew me, no, as though she knew everything about me. And more. Why did time stop? I asked, my voice trembling. The woman didn't speak at first. She merely observed me, her gaze deep and unsettling. Then, in a voice that resonated within my very being, she replied, "Time did not stop. It was simply suspended. For you. For all of you." "Why?" I asked again, though the answer seemed to linger in the air, just out of reach. "Because," she said slowly, "you needed to understand. You needed to see what you were missing before it could continue." "What do you mean? Missing what?" "The world moves, yes, but people move with it. Often. They do not stop to consider the cost of that movement, the weight of time, of actions, of decisions. How much of it is truly yours? How much of it do you own?" Her words were cryptic, her tone distant, yet oddly familiar. I felt a deep, unsettling truth rising within me. Something that touched the core of who I was, of who I had been. "The world is always moving," she continued. "But sometimes you must pause. You must stop, so that you can remember." Chapter 5. The Reckoning. Days or maybe weeks passed as I wandered through the stillness. The woman's words echoed in my mind, and I began to realize the truth behind them. Time hadn't stopped, at least not in the way I had imagined. It wasn't an external force halting the world. It was an invitation to reflect, to reconsider the choices I had made, the moments I had missed, the things I had ignored in the relentless pursuit of the future. As I stood in the middle of the frozen city, I thought back to my life, the frantic rush to get ahead, the meetings I had attended with little thought to their meaning, the relationships I had taken for granted. The woman had been right. I had never truly stopped to consider the cost of all those fleeting moments, the weight they carried. And then, as if to confirm my realization, the air shifted, the light that had guided me to the woman began to dim, and I felt the first stirrings of movement. The clock on the wall once again began to tick. The world began to shift and ripple, like water disturbed by a pebble. Slowly, but surely, time started to move again, but this time, I felt different, more aware, more present. Chapter 6. A New Beginning. Time did not return as it had been before. The ticking of the clock was softer, less demanding. People moved again, But they moved differently. There was a sense of deliberation in their actions, a quiet awareness that had not existed before the pause. I was no longer the same person who had woken up that morning. I had seen the world in its stillness, and I had glimpsed the truth that lay hidden beneath the surface of our everyday lives. Time had stopped for me, and in that frozen moment, I had been given the chance to see life through a new lens, a lens that allowed me to understand the value of every fleeting second. And so, I moved forward, not in a rush, not in a hurry, but with intention. I had learned the lesson of stillness, the lesson that time, though relentless, could also be a gift to be cherished, not wasted. For time, it seemed, had not truly stopped for us. It had merely given us a chance to stop for it.